All right, welcome back, everybody, to Culz Reviews. Much like our last couple sets of movie reviews, we're doing another director that we've done before. And we're talking about Stanley Kubrick because we've all just watched Barry Lyndon. I'm just joshing with you guys. We didn't. Sam was very confused. He was like, "Wait a minute, we were watching Barry Lyndon." No, we are checking out another film by Michael Mazzola because we've previously checked out Unacknowledged, which is a pretty decent documentary. Actually, I think it was one of our higher rated ones. Pretty much, it was a good introduction into a lot of like the UFO lore. So if you're looking at least to learn some of the background with UFO stuff, not bad. But it also stars the one we're talking about tonight is Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, which stars Stephen Greer, which there's his book. It's also somebody we've talked to or talked about when we did our interview with Steve Alton, because obviously Undisclosed was kind of their project together. They wrote Undisclosed and Unacknowledged at the same time. Now, this one's not quite a follow up film. You can pretty much watch this on its own, like it stands alone. So if you haven't watched Unacknowledged. Sorry, I'm probably gonna get those confused because they're like the same, Undisclosed, Unacknowledged. But if you have not watched Unacknowledged, you're probably fine going into this. Like it does recap a lot, or briefly recap it at the beginning, but this one more focuses on Stephen Greer's CE5 events, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. Obviously, kind of building off of J. Allen Hynek's work with Project Blue Book and how he categorized at least Close Encounters up to like third and fourth kind and stuff like that. But as usual, after that very lengthy introduction, my name is Keegan. Joining me today is
Sam.
And I'm Nick, or Nicholas Miller.
Yeah, and it's exciting to have a different voice on one of these recent reviews because it's just been me and Sam. So it's nice to have Nick joining us and just giving a different viewpoint than probably what it sounds like when we review every single time, because we probably bring up a lot of the same viewpoints.
I'm definitely grateful to be here, guys, and I hope I can bring some interesting topics to the table today.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this one has a lot, this documentary. It not as much as Unacknowledged. And Nick, have you seen Unacknowledged at least?
So that was what was interesting about your statement, because I fully agree with you in the sense that you could watch this documentary very easily without watching Unacknowledged, but like like the Joe Rogan interview with, I think it was, he's a rock star. I can't remember the specific name of this. He's a very famous rock star, but he basically repeated to Joe Rogan in this interview, have you seen Unacknowledged? And Joe Rogan says, no, I haven't seen it. What's that about? And he repeats 3 times, one after another, you got to watch Unacknowledged. And he said, well, what's it about? And he said, you got to watch Unacknowledged. And he's like, well, what is it? And he just repeats himself. And he says, is that movie with Dr. Stephen Greer? And who is a doctor, by the way. He was actually a surgeon. And he gave up his entire medical career to be in this field. And I'm sure we'll be able to get into that later. But, he's very big on the field consciousness idea and phenomena, and the oneness with the universe. And I did want to say, just in my kind of introduction here, that I would like to extend some loving and positive frequencies both out to you guys and out to the universe as well. And I think that's incredibly important, as we move forward and evolve our consciousness to that next level, and to be able to have a higher mental capacity to handle these complex subjects and these kind of life-changing and world-changing pieces of evidence that sort of bring us closer to the truth on specific subjects like the origin of mankind and also on many other things, that have just been hidden from the public over time. And I'm sure we'll get into that, but I wanted to say thanks so much for letting me be here. And yeah, I think Dr. Stephen Greer is a really amazing person to listen to and to engage in with the subject. He's an incredibly interesting individual.
Yeah, he's put a lot down onto it, that's for sure. Put a lot out there, is dealing with a lot, as he kind of explains. But before we get into spoilers about that,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, pretty much, if you're watching this, it's going to be spoilers. So, I mean, I don't know how you talk about these type of things without, yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not like a movie where we can be like cut and dry. Okay, here's like the non-spoilers. Here's the spoilers. This is more, this is more like here's facts, and we'll just have to spoil stuff. So, if you guys haven't watched this film, just go watch it. You can watch it for free on Tubi. I think it's on Amazon Prime and stuff. So it's not hard to get. So go watch it and then come back and listen to us talk about it.
True. Going back to that rock star, I mean, it would be hard to try to explain unacknowledged to kind of anyone, and especially kind of Joe Rogan in a way. So he's just like, yeah, no, you just got to go watch it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because that is one of those things where, especially with him being on a platform that's reaching over 12 million people live. Joe Rogan has one of the biggest platforms out there in terms of a live sort of like listening and watching experience, in terms of like podcast type radio host sort of stuff. He's like the marquee and staple for people like Lex Fridman, who use Joe Rogan as an inspiration, and now look at Lex Fridman. Lex Fridman's like, on a near level of Joe Rogan. And so it's awesome to see those guys succeed in this particular type of approach and way of going about, generating content here on the platform. But I will say that Joe Rogan has been interesting because his opinions have flip-flopped and changed so many times over the years, where, years ago, he was completely against the moon landing being real. And then now he has flopped back to saying that he definitely knows that the moon landing was real. And he's also said that he thought that UFOs are all just a big creation of the government. It has nothing to do with extraterrestrial life. And then now that he has, spoken to a lot more people about the subject, it seems like he's flip-flopping back to believing that extraterrestrials, are real or could be real. He kind of stays in a neutral zone, in a safe zone, where he's not going to say he believes that it's real or that it's not real. He's going to just say like, I'm waiting for, evidence to, decide one way or the other. But he is open to the possibility. And I think that's one of the most important things for anyone listening here, or for just anyone in general, is to just be open to the possibility that a lot of these things may not fall under explainable terms. A lot of these things that are anomalous phenomena are not, it's not all just bullshit, or sorry, don't mean to cuss. It's not all just BS. It's not all just people's figments of their imagination. Most of these subjects really do have an ancient history and a lot of lore behind them, and a lot of actually substantial supportive evidence that really helps to solidify some of these theories that have just been considered theories for so long. That kind of gets into another big part of the topic for me personally, because this whole UFO subject in general, and other things regarding information that the government does not want to get out, there is really serious evidence behind that. And they talk about this a lot in the documentary. But it's the entrapment and actual murdering of people who have real information on the UFO subject. And this is one of the biggest reasons why full disclosure has never been able to be brought to light, or fully become a reality. That information would be highly valuable to us, the public. But it's we are completely devoid of any top secret clearances, and we really don't have access to the locations where these secret crafts are being held. A lot of people will try to say, that the government having highly advanced secret technology is just all alleged, and that it really doesn't have any gravity to it, or really like non-circumstantial evidence. But I would really disagree, and I would posit that the government has kept hidden technology, such as the stealth bomber, and such as the Blackbird. The Blackbird can go, speeds up to Mach 10, like speeds that are almost inhumanly possible. You wouldn't even be able to be inside the craft because of how fast this is moving. The G forces go to a level that would, make anyone pass out. And when that technology was released, it was one of the most groundbreaking aerial technologies that has ever been released. People were absolutely mind blown by the technology of the Blackbird. And it was later admitted that the Blackbird had been worked on for like several decades, I believe it was. It had been worked on for at least a single decade before it was ever released to the public. It was a very highly secretive project due to, national security reasons for the government, allegedly national security reasons. That's the reason that the government uses for a lot of these things that they keep from the public. And I would also venture to say that this reason of national security for keeping this information from us has kind of been milked really hard, and they've used this reasoning many times for specific pieces of information on this subject that are extremely important for the public to know. However, there's also the issue, with that actually causing for the public to completely freak out and basically destroy the entire economic and social systems of the world. So, I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that. Do you think that humankind is actually truly ready to handle the alien concept, and basically the implication that if this is all true, and there's, I say there's mountains of supportive evidence to help support this claim, but do you think it would be possible for humankind and for society and our civilization to thrive if full disclosure truly happened?
I mean, I think if you look back to one of our recent interviews with Wally, it kind of just shows how it can change people's life, but it seemed like it, at least, maybe not, he didn't have like disclosure, but he had an experience.
Yeah.
So that led him to a very different mindset, and perhaps a more positive thinking one, and just, I don't know, considering what happened in 2020, during 2020, I think I even told Sam perhaps people aren't ready for
Yeah.
UFOs.
I
Yeah.
definitely agree.
There's
Yeah,
also
I think it
oh,
just depends on what, like how it goes about it. Like if they do it in the way that like they do in the CE5 with Stephen Greer, they would be ready. But if they did it in the other way, whereas as they were talking about with like the government abducting people, yeah, no, that's going to scare them. And then like people have been traumatized by experiences like that. And so then they would make the public not open to that idea.
totally. Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's unfortunate because like I was saying, the locations of where these secretive crafts are being held are completely inaccessible to us, to the public. So there's really, no way for us to kind of like invade. Remember the whole like, let's invade Area 51? And that really started out just as a complete joke.
By
That was
Jeremy
never,
Corbell.
yeah, that was never a serious thing. And but a lot of people, of course, did take it seriously, as you would expect from from the general population.
Yeah, no, you could go up because it ended up like a ton of people showed up, and it wasn't starred by Jeremy Corbell. We just know he's made a documentary about it that we're waiting for him to come out with.
Right.
But I remember a couple vloggers that don't usually film like UFO stuff went to Area 51 at this time, and they were right up at the gates. Like you could go right up to the gate and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I saw tons of videos. People were like farming likes and just farming following and traction on their content by talking about this because it's a funny subject. But like I was saying, we would never have access. And if someone and even if 1,000 people tried to invade Area 51, they would all most likely be shot down, or they would it would create a situation where they'd send out, troops to apprehend these people, right? And not to mention, and I know you guys know a bit about this, and some of your previous people that you've talked with on your show here, about the DUMBs, the deep underground military bases, which were pretty secretive right up until the 70s or so, because Area 51 was eventually exposed, right? And then we also know of an even more secretive deep underground military base that a lot of people that are well versed in the UFO phenomenon are aware of, called the Dulce base. The Dulce base underneath, it's around the area of Los Alamos Labs, and there's a lot of pretty highly secretive stuff that goes on at Los Alamos Labs, specifically involving the creation of plutonium and creating missiles, using these elements. And so, we have a lot of information on the Dulce base. I feel like the most profound thing that you can look up to research on the Dulce base is the very infamous or famous. It's not really infamous, I would say, if you're interested on it, but it's the Dulce Papers, which were allegedly created by a whistleblower who worked at the Dulce base. And there is some very kind of frightening information about what goes on at the Dulce base in the Dulce Papers. And so you'd have to check that out. Sometime you guys will have to check out the Dulce Papers and let me know what you think of that. He has actual diagrams written on there, showing basically tanks and vats of these human animal hybrids, and of it's a pretty frightening story, regardless if it's true or not. there's, plenty of information about deep underground military bases that you can, get access to with the right searches. But just back to the main subject, that having access to this information or the real data, and the relationship between extraterrestrials and mankind, would disturb the agenda of many, elite figures in the governments around the world, as well as the secret black government that they do talk about in the documentary as well, who are essentially, their whole agenda is for money and power and control, and is like very much an evil agenda, compared to an agenda of positivity and seeking growth and evolution and trying to progress the human civilization towards towards the future of becoming a type 1 or a type 2 civilization. And the military, the CIA, these figures that I'm talking about that are really in control of the whole system, go to extremely great lengths, using things like entrapment and using all sorts of excuses and reasons to murder the people that have this real information on the UFO subject. And have you guys heard of Phil Schneider?
I think
Don't.
so, a little bit.
I mean, the name sounds familiar, but I think there's other people I'm attributing that to.
Yeah, Phil Schneider is definitely an interesting story. I wouldn't say that I necessarily truly believe all of his statements 100%. But he has some really interesting information about him working on a deep underground military base and essentially having this confrontation with extraterrestrial beings down in this very deep tunnel, like cave, that he was being required to work on, and that several military officials, died from trying to basically shoot these non-human entities. And that is why Phil Schneider actually also lost 2 fingers on his hand, because he said the beam of the laser went directly through his 2 fingers here on his hand. And and he also had some really interesting artifacts, pieces of metal that were not earthly metals, and also other weird, interesting artifacts like allegedly pieces of actual craft, actual extraterrestrial crafts. And he displayed these at several of the public, speakings that he did about this. And then he was murdered. And he was murdered, allegedly, he committed suicide, right? And that's an explanation that is used all the time when there is very substantial evidence that it was not a suicide. And they said that he strangled himself with this big black tube. And what's interesting about that is that he did not have the 2 fingers on his on one of his hands, and it would be incredibly difficult to strangle yourself using this thick tube with really only these 2 fingers and a thumb on one hand to grab it. I guess it could be possible, but that's a really interesting case. Phil Schneider is a super interesting guy to look up if you're interested on the deep underground military base subject. But getting back to the documentary, I've always felt that Stephen Greer is a pretty amazing person, and I definitely support his cause to the end. because he's really trying to get humans to be able to interact with these UFOs and the controllers of these crafts that we have no idea how they are even performing the physical flight maneuvers that they are. We're talking like a craft that is 80,000 feet in the atmosphere. Then in less than a split second, the craft is now moved down to the surface of the water. So that's like an 80,000 foot drop in less than a split second. And it's stationary when it's up at 80,000 feet, and then it's stationary again when it's right above the water. So we're talking about a velocity that would create a G-force that would turn anyone into a pile of human meat. Your body would not be able to sustain a speed like that. From going that fast directly to a stop and just completely stationary. What are your guys' thoughts on Stephen Greer and his opinions on the subject and about his experiences that he's had?
When I first found out about him and looked into him a little bit more, I was always super fascinated. At first I was definitely questionable a little bit, just because anytime you dive into something, you can't always go full in being yeah, this is amazing and this is legitimate. You have to kind of look into it a lot more and dive in. And when I dived in, I was just okay, no, this seems more I don't know. I became more and more knowing that a lot of what he did was probably more accurate than it actually was.
Yeah.
So it's pretty fascinating. I've definitely enjoyed his conversations and everything that he has to say about this topic, just because it's always fascinating and unique.
Yeah, absolutely. At the very beginning of the documentary, there is a quote that is an incredibly interesting quote. And when you research this quote, it can take your mind to really interesting places. And I had it in my notes here, but I can't find that specific quote right now, but I have several other quotes. And right around just after that, right around 6 or 7 minutes into the documentary, there were some pretty incredibly interesting UFO videos that I actually hadn't seen before. I've seen, many, many UFO videos. I would say that probably over 90% of them are completely faked, either using some type of video editing software or using some type of CGI generation. But there was one that really caught my eye, where it was five lights, five really big balls of light in a U-shaped pattern like this. And or sorry, it would have been one at the bottom. But I thought that was really interesting, because that was sort of extremely similar to probably my most influential, I would say, UFO experience that I have personally had. My experience was pretty interesting. I probably won't go into that now, but it was very similar. That U-shaped pattern was very similar to the UFO experience that I've had. And it's pretty rare that I see a video where I see a very similar sort of experience. And so that was super cool to see that. And it was interesting when Greer was saying right after that we are in probably the most important time in human history, uh, currently now, where we are actually beginning to make real contact with extraterrestrial beings, um, and be able to engage with extraterrestrial civilizations and communicate them. That I think is arguably truly the biggest discovery or revelation of all recorded human history. Um, except though I would also argue that we have already had um, complete communication with extraterrestrial civilizations. We already have a clear display of extraterrestrial contact in ancient scriptures from all over the world, including the Bible. Um, you had an interview with Mr. Wagner recently, who went into great detail on the extraterrestrial connection between humankind and aliens in the Bible. And that's a super interesting interview. So I would say to anyone who's watching, you should definitely check out that interview. He's a great speaker, and he has some very fascinating thoughts on the subject. But what are your guys' thoughts on, kind of this subject, where we have been essentially manipulated for many, many centuries to not believe in extraterrestrial life? So, do you think this would really be the biggest revelation, basically? Especially in the minds of all the people who did not and currently do not believe in the existence of extraterrestrial life.
Before we get into that, let's have Keegan's thoughts on Stephen Greer, because you didn't really give him a chance to speak about that.
Yeah,
But
Well, I mean that was like my fault too. I had to put myself on mute for a sec. I mean, I came across Stephen Greer mainly because of this book, Undisclosed, like I said, by author Steve Alton, mainly because it's a fictional work, but it's based off of a lot of interviewees from Stephen Greer, and it even talks about like Steve Alton's CE5 stuff with Stephen Greer in the like prologue or whatever. And then at the end, it talked about the book that they were working on together, on Unacknowledged, which then when it came time to pick a UFO documentary for our paranormal trilogy, that's why we picked that one, I think, because it seemed like probably the most legitimate one.
Yeah.
As far as like Stephen Greer, it's hard to say. I definitely think what he says, like from before he came out, definitely seems like a lot of stuff in there that could be truthful, right? I just know it's hard for us to really know right now in our financial states because it costs a lot of money to go on these CE5 events. I think it's something like $3,000+.
Oh, wow.
And so there has been some stuff that's come out about those things, but until I go, I can't really speak to that.
Sure.
But yeah, I believe in extraterrestrials and all that. I always try to be a little skeptical, though sometimes the want for like paranormal stuff always gets the better of me, perhaps, and I'm like, oh yeah,
Sure. Yeah, I think that's an innate human function, is to want to be able to believe that these things are real, because it's incredibly interesting. I would say that to posit that extraterrestrial life does not exist would be an extreme naivety, because to think that that the universe was designed in all of its like nearly infinite vastness for just one civilization is, in my eyes, incredibly selfish. And it just doesn't, not being open to the existence of extraterrestrials is really what I think is holding humanity back in terms of being able to progress and evolve and eventually be able to go off planet and continue the human race and continue to evolve both mentally, physically, and spiritually. I think that just the total rejection of the subject is truly probably why also that the alien agenda itself will not reveal itself to the human public. Because if you have so many people that are completely rejecting the idea, that is truly what would cause for mass panic. If they ended up, just landing on the White House lawn and revealing themselves to the public.
Yeah, and I think for people that are looking for maybe a soft way into like alien life, there's an interesting 2005 made-for-TV documentary movie type of thing. It's called Alien Planet. It's something that I know we've talked about here on the channel, but it's about an expedition to Darwin 4. And it has a bunch of actually pretty well-known scientists that talk about this ecosystem, like Stephen Hawking, Michio Kaku, Jack Horner, and some others. I mean, obviously, it's based off of the Expedition book. And then another one, too, that I think people would really enjoy is the History Channel series, Project Blue Book.
Yeah.
It's a really, really good series, and I think it's another easy way to get in, because I think, I mean, J. Allen Hynek in himself is like a pretty good way, I think, to get in, because it's always interesting to see someone that started out as a skeptic, that even though he didn't believe in old encounters, he was like, no, there's some out there that are real.
Yeah.
And like he came out and said that. So I think for viewers, maybe if you want to start off a little easier, just kind of start opening your mind, maybe those three things.
Yeah, exactly.
A very good start, that's for sure.
On the subject of the people that are really against the belief of extraterrestrial life, I really think that is a product of government programming. They did mention this a lot in the documentary, basically talking about that there's a ton of secretive government projects all around the world, not just in the US, not just the CIA. There's so many all around the world, and there's so many things about the CIA that are very supportive evidence to show that the CIA is running, social manipulation projects where on mass scales all around the world, different populations of people are being manipulated through these secret government projects. I mean, we all know, I guess not all of us probably, but people who are interested in this subject are probably well aware of the supportive evidence that talks about the CIA using mind control projects, and what's interesting about that is that there's actual documents where that are not top secret that the CIA openly admits to running these projects, like 30 years ago. They always release this stuff like decades after it happens, It's like it's just too secretive. It's too much for the public to handle at the time. In the documentary, speaking about the CIA, I'm sure you guys saw the part about the CIA's crystal ball. I thought that was super interesting. Have you guys heard about the crystal ball before?
Yeah.
It's it's like, it's not an actual physical crystal ball. It was a man who literally could see anywhere using mind projection psychic travel. There's another gentleman who was being used for this. It's there's a specific name for it, where people with this ability are able to literally like project their consciousness to different locations and describe exactly what's happening at that location at that time. And there's even been these viewers of people that can project their consciousness, where they can even go to different timelines and describe what's happening. And there's like real evidential supportive data that shows that these predictions, as you could call them, are completely accurate. And the CIA used these people with this ability for many, many years. And they had a whole project on that specific subject, of these people that could go to places psychically with their mind and be able to see things that no one else can. That whole subject is alluded to by the famous quote that they used in the documentary by Albert Einstein, which states, "Everyone who is seriously interested in the pursuit of science becomes convinced that a spirit is manifested in the laws of the universe. A spirit is vastly superior to man, and one in the face of which our modest powers must seem humble." And I just think that's a super interesting quote because it really makes you think. And, there's a lot more gravity in that quote than, just reading it at face value when you really get into it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm trying to remember what the name of that one project. It's like escapes me right now.
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's
The Man Who Stared at Goats.
No.
It's a comedy movie, but it's based off of that project.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I know it's like it was over on like the East Coast, and there was a man who, or like there was like two people, like this dude met this one guy and he brought him out to like this site that was like abandoned, and then he started to remember like what happened there.
Yeah.
This was like they like basically these two gentlemen traveled in time. The one like forgot about it just because through that project they like inject you with something that like makes you get like amnesia essentially from it.
Yeah.
But like he went forward in time when like that building was no longer there, but then they went back there and then like they started to remember that they were a part of that project that like only recently disbanded, and they remember everything they did within that project.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of that project right now.
I think it's MK Ultra. I remembered it.
Yeah, it is that one.
MK Ultra Mind Programming CIA project. You can find a lot of information about it. Some of it has actually been disclosed to the public, which is what's so interesting to me, is like these types of subjects truly get swept under the rug by the media and, by just the general public,
I know they throw out all this stuff, but they do it at like the right moment where something else is happening, like given like the Super Bowl or something big, to where like they throw it out, but there's something else going on to where like not many people notice it, and those that do notice it, but the other people are just distracted by the distraction of like other things.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even think it has to even be that. If you look back at like the Nimitz videos,
yeah,
very famous videos that you and me were talking about 2 years before everyone else, and then it became like this big old thing, and we had talked about that in BlackRock like almost 2 years before anyone else. The difference was like we were looking for it, I guess, and everyone else was just doing the daily grind.
Yeah, everybody else was just like oblivious to it, whereas like we were just we search into it for the most part.
Sure. Yeah, if you're speaking the information,
I forgot about a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, if you truly seek the information, from the right sources, you can find some incredibly, in my eyes, some incredibly valuable pieces of information that, when you add all these pieces up, it's really difficult for me to try to say like it's all completely BS, because that's also pretty offensive to the people that have had the actual experiences of seeing a craft that they truly know from their heart is not of this world, and to
Mhm.
just discount their experiences is is I think just incredibly negative and rude, and I think it's kind of it's wrong, because these people are putting their their entire careers
Asian.
and their whole lives on the line to tell these stories, and then they're just being completely discounted as psychotic people. And that to me is just super wrong. And it all goes into the elite powers that are kind of running the show here on the planet, that are withholding this information from us. I've been watching all of these documentaries on the pyramids. I'm sure most everyone goes through a phase where they watch documentaries on the pyramids. But some of these
Mhm.
recent ones are really interesting because they're talking about, the Sphinx having weathering on it that's over 12,000 years old, and that the Sphinx could actually be even much older than that. Also, there is just uh, nonstop new findings of hidden chambers and hidden tunnels that a person couldn't even fit through. Like a small opening this big, like four of them on each side of the chamber, that all run like hundreds of feet down through the pyramid with just like surgical precision, And it's like, wow, that I just
Like,
the more you learn about the pyramids, the more the questions you have.
I mean, I want to believe that those things are for cats, just because cats were big in that time, which could be
Yeah.
like a species out of like they could be a like an ancient species or an extraterrestrial species as well. But like my first thought was to be like, oh, dude, it's for the cats to travel down and
Yeah,
get
yeah,
other
yeah,
places
exactly.
spies or
It's
something,
the perfect tunnel for their like messenger cats to travel and
right?
deliver their messages to people.
I
Uh,
mean, I've definitely read some of the like different history books on pyramids and stuff, and obviously some of those seem to be like it was used to draw in water and stuff from the Nile, which ran much closer to the pyramids at the time,
yeah,
and help
Which could
try to generate like energy and stuff.
yeah.
Not saying I believe it, but I've definitely dug into those books, and if I'm trying to look at my bookshelf because I can see one, but I can't see the authors to try to give you guys who it was.
That's all right.
nah, but like, yeah, no, I know what you mean by like looking into the pyramids because like I've definitely been like through on something on YouTube and like then it would just like continuous to like other videos
Yeah,
and then it would go back to the pyramids and like each time it's always like I learned something new or like something that I didn't know and I'm just like that's like huh like it's always fascinating.
totally. The one that I watched recently, and I'll have to find it and try to mention it at a later date if I am featured on here again, is they found a they found a random hidden chamber underneath one of the bridges that would have been like a walkway um in the city where the pyramids are located, and all of that is, in ruin now. It was buried in sand before they excavated it quite a while ago. But they found this
Mhm.
chamber where it's just kind of out of nowhere, and it's 100-foot drop. So it's a tiny little space that you could fit a human into, and then it's a straight 100-foot drop. There is no ladder, there is nothing there, and at the bottom there's this big pit. And they theorize, there's many theories on this, but they theorize that this is maybe where they dropped their dead. And also they theorize it could have had to do with the discarding of dead bodies, but they also had a funny theory that I appreciated even more, that it was like a snake murder pit where they drop you down this huge pit, and if you survive, you're completely mangled, and then you just have hundreds of snakes to deal with at the bottom.
It's possible. You never know.
Yeah, exactly.
So
But
talks of those like movies and whatnot,
exactly.
or snake traps, essentially.
Yeah,
Indiana Jones.
It's a
Right.
classic it's a classic action movie trope, I would say. But just going back to Dr. Greer, the reason why I find him fascinating, and like you guys were saying, you can't try to just say like he is completely correct in everything he's saying, and treat him like the new Messiah that brings us into contact with UFOs or extraterrestrial civilizations. But he did have that near-death experience when he actually died when he was 17, and was able to come back. So I thought that was pretty interesting, that he like actually physically died and was able to be resuscitated. And when he died, that was when he had that experience of field consciousness, where it's like a oneness with the universe. They've talked about it in like deep meditation. It's like that level of nirvana where you're projecting your consciousness into this higher realm, and you're essentially transcending, if you will. It's like the classic concept of transcendence. And so I thought that was really interesting, that he had that experience, as well as his UFO experiences. I thought another super interesting quote was, "My individual awareness could merge with the ocean of unbounded cosmic mind." That was what Stephen Greer explained the feeling that he had when he died. And he said that was the experience that taught him that there's nothing to be afraid of in this life, and there's nowhere to go. So you're already there. You just have to open to what's already there within you. And this liberated him in a way that he could never imagine. And it is true liberation through the deeper experience in meditation. And that's why it's explained that every single mind on the planet and in the universe, every single conscious being is like a quantum hologram. But if you look at every single sentient being in the cosmos, there is the cosmos is actually folded within this holographic structure of every sentient being's consciousness. And that was an incredibly interesting concept for me, because that's like a lot to grasp for your mind. That the entirety of the cosmos, everything which is within, is like a holographic quantum hologram within every single conscious being. That's what he was describing. And so, Stephen Greer goes on these deep, quiet, meditative quests to communicate with extraterrestrial beings, so that you can obtain the knowledge and see places that no one else can. And he said that in reality, that state of consciousness is always there. You just have to get into a quiet state of mind, and then it will be able to open itself to you. So yeah, I've tried to do some meditative practice, and I've tried to even get into channeling a bit. But for me, it's very difficult to truly know, what is being created in my own mind. If my own mind is just telling me what I want to hear, or if I'm actually receiving some type of higher dimensional message as I'm in these deep, quiet, meditative states. So yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on this concept that every conscious being has the entire universe within them as like a quantum hologram within the consciousness, that all sentient minds are one mind? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's definitely been a topic where people bring up like the universe puts itself into itself to learn more about itself, and that's kind of where like consciousness may go. That's kind of getting more like religious and like spiritual in a way. But there's that, and I know also there's been some studies done with like meditation.
Yeah,
but it's always, like you said, kind of hard, because in controls it's hard to tell, are these people giving themselves these ideas or subconsciously even. So that's where I think the study kind of is hard, just because the outside researchers like have no idea what that person's done for like the last 30-40 years.
Yeah.
Sure. No, I think it's a really good. I mean, I like the like thought of that and the theory of it, and like I've tried it myself as well. But like again, I don't think I've like reached that point to where like I haven't done it enough to like reach that certain area. But like when I thought I have, I was like questioning it like you were, just because it's hard to really tell if you're just like getting that yourself or creating that yourself, or if you're actually experiencing it.
Yeah.
But there could be something that like we just like aren't like ready for it, or just not opened enough to where like when we do actually experience it, you will actually know.
Yeah, exactly.
But then again, it'll be hard to know then too.
Yeah.
It's just like a difficult thing where you're just like,
the rabbit hole goes ever deeper,
right?
Right. I mean, there's the existential question: if everyone's reality is in their own mind, who has the true reality?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? With that little spinner, and we spin. If it starts to wobble, we'll know.
Yeah, well,
Inception.
you will know if we've been incepted or not. The whole
Right?
this whole merging of artificial intelligence with human consciousness, theoretically is going to develop into, a new being, essentially. A new like super being that is a combination of humanity and artificial intelligence. Like a biological machine, if you will, that is gonna, I would think would probably be able to progress the human civilization much faster in terms of getting towards the type 1 and type 2 civilizations, where you're going off planet and eventually to even other galaxies and conquering other galaxies through the use of Dyson spheres and Jupiter brains, which is another concept that I've been really getting into. That the concept of the Jupiter brain is like it's a computer that made of each cell that makes up this computer is an individual computer itself, and these are nanites. So it's an entire planet made up of nanite computers, and it would be so powerful that it would be able to process every single moment in history, every single so there's been around 100 billion humans that have lived on the planet throughout the course of history. And it basically says that this Jupiter brain would have the processing capability of being able to process every single memory, every single moment in time, every single action, every single conjuration of the mind, every dream that every single human who has ever lived ever had. And it would be able to process all of this in a split second, in less than a microsecond, using only a 16th of its power. So that's a really interesting concept for me. They say that the only way that you could power a computer this big would be through the use of a Dyson sphere, which was the theory where you would actually build a structure around a star, and you would be able to capture every single bit of energy, or I think like 92% of the energy output from a star. And I just, these big sci-fi concepts like that are always super interesting to me.
Yeah, like deep thought in Hitchhiker's Guide.
Yes, like that, exactly like that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I kind of perceive at the time, because we think that it would take that, but like it may not even take even that much. There could be stuff like out in like the cosmos or on other things that could power that.
Yeah.
Without needing to use an entire star for that.
Some sort of like infinite power source the size of an atom or something,
Yeah, I mean, because we can only test so much and find so much with the given technology that we supposedly can like handle. Who knows what those secret like government programs and all that know more about and have ability to test more that they just not going to give to us yet or at all.
Sure, yeah. I was going to say there seems to be this pattern where technology that is hidden and secretive doesn't get released until many decades later, which has led to the theory that the secret government is like decades ahead technology wise from humanity, and in contrast to that, in some of these UFO experiences, these crafts are displaying different types of technology that people are saying would be like 100,000 years in the future before you could access this like higher dimensional technology where you're like popping in and out of dimensions in order to travel much faster than light.
I mean, at the rate that we're progressing, yeah. But like if we actually focus more on that than like our military investments and our like media stuff, then we could probably progress that much faster. But with our given like focused goals, it will take that much longer in order to do that.
I mean, I would almost argue that it's only because of the military that we advanced to where we are today. I mean, if you look at every time we make a big jump, be it like nuclear fusion or like going to the moon, it always has a military like reasoning behind it. So I would actually say it's more because of the military that we get there.
Yeah.
It's for the wrong reason opposed from the better reasons.
Yeah, and there's one guy that
with that dominion, that like
yes, like, exactly. Yeah. He's saying this is the wrong approach. The military is trying to spin the subject of the UFO concept into being this big threat, in order to unite humanity into this one world consciousness. But it's all that whole new world order concept is literally to put them in the ultimate supreme power of the planet. Now not only are they running separate countries, they're just running the entire globe all at once. They have much more control. They have more money, more power. That's their only concern, and that's the issue with the approach that we have right now.
Yeah, and then there's nobody to like not let them go on in their whatever their agenda may be at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. In the documentary, there was a lot of really profound um, data about how consciousness and conscious thought can actually affect something at a distance, and even at a very great distance, even many miles or thousands of miles away, instantaneously. And the question is like, what does that mean for us? Um, if we were communicating with a civilization that is centered on the science of consciousness, and that is their chief operating system, it's not electromagnetic, but it's beyond that. So now if you add everything we know about the internet and communications and compare them to these technologies that these crafts are displaying, um, these technologies, from a lot of people's perspective, are showing that they are operated and powered by conscious thought. And this is why they have no propulsion system. There are electromagnetic propulsion systems that are able to achieve anti-gravitational technology. There's patents in the United States government of of anti-gravitational propulsion systems. And that's what a lot of people are saying these black triangles are using, that they're using these anti-gravitational propulsion systems. However, on the truly extraterrestrial craft, there's really no evidence of any propulsion system whatsoever, and that they are actually being operated by the consciousness and psychic abilities of the extraterrestrials themselves.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, because once you reach a certain point, like, you wouldn't really need to control it. You could just like go places, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. You could project and learn about the universe, using this. You could even like physically, you know, uh, this type of evolution could be even taken to the point of, physically popping out of this dimension, out of this three-dimensional universe, and going into a higher dimension, and then being able to instantaneously pop back into this universe at a different point in space and time. And that's always been really interesting for me to think about, because these are like powers that I would compare to like Neo from the Matrix, when he finally realizes that he's the one. um, you know, Zero inhibitions towards the rules of the three-dimensional universe, and he's just able to like fly and dodge any bullet. And it just reminds me of this kind of concept of like transcendence, you know, where you're going into this higher plane of consciousness, which allows for things that we would consider to be miracles or magic in our three-dimensional universe. But to the higher dimensions, this is just like a normal phenomena, if you will.
But that does bring us to the topic that we should mention because you were talking about man-made crafts. There was a topic of a potential, like, there's been multiple talks through many different things about like a fake invasion, and that they're like preparing preparing for it, because like there's been some news coverage of like crafts being shot down, but like it's basically they're our own crafts that we've created and
Yeah.
shooting them down to make it seem like we're being attacked.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
even here says it perfectly, like, and like if you're in this field as well, like if we were going to be attacked, we would have been, and we
Yeah.
wouldn't be here right now in this like kind of way that we are.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I mean, put a different person in charge of the alien race, they might change. Plus, you don't know if because when you look at stars right now, a lot of those are dead. Like those are gone. So perhaps when they're looking at us, it's still like a way distant in the past Earth, and so they don't even know we exist yet.
True. There is that
Yeah.
possibility.
I would definitely imagine that would be the case, you know. If there's life, 10 billion light years away from us, then, you know, we will probably be long gone before, you know, or we would be long gone before they would ever see us. It would take 10 billion years for them to be able to see us. So, on that subject, specifically about, you know, the government manipulating this whole concept, you know, that the To the Stars Academy that was started up by Tom DeLonge, you know,
Mhm.
singer of Blink 182 famously. um the people on the panel of the whole Tom DeLonge UFO project, which is where they're trying to actually create UFO crafts for the human population to be able to travel in and release information that is so profound it will change the entire course of human history and this and that. But the people that are on the panel that are at that are like in charge of this whole project are literally the people that were the head of covert operations for the CIA. Um, the exact people that would have the power to put the spin on the UFO subject that this is a threat to the dominion of humankind. And uh, I think most of us that are really deeply into this subject for real, especially people that have had experiences, uh, understand and know that if these beings wanted to destroy us, we would have been vaporized, you know, thousands of times over the course of history that we've been seeing these objects, because we've been seeing these objects have been seen by humankind since the dawn of recorded history. So the earliest scriptures and hieroglyphs and carvings, even on cave walls, depict uh, very, very interesting depictions of what look like to be extraterrestrial craft in the sky. And I don't think we could dismiss that, you know. But that was also displayed really well in the documentary with right after they talked about this, with a huge compilation of different movies and shows that have been released over time, which clearly show that aliens have always been spun to be a threat to mankind, which just also adds to people not believing and calling the believers psychotic because of how outlandish and just crazy the spin on extraterrestrial beings has been for so many decades now. You know, aliens are this big evil, you know, threat to mankind. And all the movies show, you know, like The Predator and Alien and, you know, all these movies about extraterrestrial beings always show them as this terrifying, threatening presence. And that's like a product of this conditioning for so many decades that, you know, aliens would be this big threat that would wipe us out. And that is what is holding us back from being able to get the real information. And that is what is keeping these elite controlling powers at the head of the operation. And that is what's allowing for them to perpetuate this whole concept that all the aliens are this evil threat, that the world is in danger from them. You know, that helps them just obtain more money and power through fear and
True.
disinformation.
I think one of the movies actually would show a good representation of like another world's like creatures, not an intelligent being, but like the kind of underrated movie The Mist. Like those creatures aren't like an intelligent being, they're just like are like type of animals from another place that came over and was just doing their thing and just ravaging like a town and like this whole community. But like that would be a more better representation of like evil beings out there, but just more of like evil creatures from another planet that are not like they're just doing their thing and feeding.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
They're not
about like
necessarily
District
evil.
9?
Yeah. District 9 is good too.
Yeah, that one is a good one as well.
Yeah, where
Um,
they're actually just held prisoner here. Like, all they want to do is leave.
What about
Right.
that ending of The Mist, though? How'd you like that? I don't want to spoil it, but man, that's a pretty solid twist there at the end of The Mist.
Uh,
I would definitely say that the CGI in The Mist
I-
is very lame compared to the CGI in District 9. The CGI in District 9 is actually like still looked at to this day as one of the best CGI creations in history. So I really think that District 9 is a cool concept. I myself like really don't I have like a fear of crustaceans, but I don't have a fear of spiders. But I just the way that crabs move and have all their little legs and filaments in their face and stuff. Um, it was kind of that uncanny valley area for me where it's like pretty creepy to think that, you know, you're like turning into this lobster creature or something like that.
I mean, there is definitely a movie where Colin Farrell turns into a lobster.
oh yeah.
That's good. I put here in my notes the total consciousness of the earth is one mind. Um and
I'll be
that
right back. I have to use the restroom real quick.
oh, you're good. Yeah, the total consciousness of the earth is one mind. And then further expanding upon that, the total consciousness of the universe is one mind. I think that's an incredibly deep and interesting subject to think about. You know, all sentient life is a part of this one working force, you know, this one like connected system that you know, everything within the system affects the entirety of the system as a whole. Even the smallest little moment in time, as we perceive time linearly, has the ability to completely change reality as we know it, and you know, create all these infinite different offshoots of different realities that make up every single infinite possibility that we have, you know, in the third dimension. And that's like a fifth dimensional concept, the concept of possibility. You know, in the fifth dimension, you would be able to perceive every infinite parallel reality in one. There's that super great video of I think it's called like perceiving the 10th dimension, and it talks about, you know, what the consciousness would be like in these higher dimensions. I'm sure you've seen that. Do you remember that video?
I, yeah, I like bits and pieces. Like I think I know what you're talking about. I don't remember it like off the top of my head, but like it was very very interesting. It
Yeah.
was definitely pretty. I don't know. Like I was like overwhelmed when I watch it, if I'm remembering it correctly, because I was just like, oh, it's like a lot that goes in there, and like trying to like perceive it, and like what we know is just like it was overwhelming. It was
Yeah, I agree. Definitely the first time I saw that video, it was um it was just mind-boggling. Like uh total discombobulation of the mind, because like we don't really have the ability to see what that's like, you know. We don't have the ability to go to these higher dimensions and see what it's truly like. So our like perception of what it would be is probably inaccurate. I bet we have like a very small understanding of it, and we probably do have some accurate parts of that understanding. But I would say that um, actually experiencing it is probably much different than what we know now. I would say we just have a very limited view of what that would mean. But you know, in the perception of higher dimensions, it gets just more and more discombobulating for your mind the higher you go. Because, you know, once
Mhm.
you get to the seventh dimension, it's like your consciousness would be able to create infinite realities, you know, just like this one. Your consciousness would essentially be able to, just with your thought, you would be able to manifest something in the third dimension that is like infinite realities of what we are perceiving now, you know. And then it just gets more and more intense as you go up. I do think that now we've mathematically been able to prove the existence of up to 12 dimensions, possibly even 13 at this point. But the theory is that there are technically infinite dimensions. There You know, it doesn't just go from 1 to 12 and that's it. The theory mathematically is that there are truly infinite dimensions. So that, you know, the the universe just gets more and more complicated the more you learn about it. Um, One concept that I was going to bring up with you guys is just because we were talking about, you know, the CIA involvement with this, is specifically the JFK situation, because that situation really gives supportive evidence to elite powers having control, essentially ultimate control over these big things that happen. You know, they set them up secretively, and these big moments in time that happen totally do change the course of human history. You know, the assassination of JFK totally changed the whole course of the whole world. Um, and what's interesting about the assassination of JFK, particularly on this subject, is JFK talked with Marilyn Monroe, and there are transcripts of their conversations where JFK talked deeply about the flying saucer situation to her, and that he had very serious intentions to reveal this information to the public, at least to some extent. And this was supposedly one of the reasons why JFK was assassinated, involving the CIA, who desperately did not want this information to get out. That wasn't the only reason for the CIA to want Kennedy to be assassinated, because Castro was letting Russia, the Soviet Union at the time, to store nuclear missiles, which threatened all of the Western Hemisphere. So that was one of the major reasons why the U.S. wanted Castro overthrown and out of Cuba, because he heavily supported Russia, which was a huge threat, you know, to the United States. And we didn't want Russian missiles being created or stored. And at the time, we hated the communist regime. I would say that many people still do. The U.S. mafia wanted Castro out because Castro put an end to the mafia's casinos out in Cuba. So yeah, the U.S. mafia wanted him out, the U.S. government wanted him out, and rebel Cubans wanted him out, and hence the Bay of Pigs invasion, which was heavily supported by both the CIA and rebel agents in Cuba that didn't support Castro. But then JFK, who was supposed to provide, this is the most interesting part for me, JFK, who was supposed to provide military support for the Bay of Pigs invasion, completely backed out of it. And he was completely chastised by the mafia, who's there. All of the mafia's casinos in Cuba were destroyed by Castro. And so, you know, they hated Castro. And then JFK backed out, completely backed out, and did not provide any military support for the Bay of Pigs invasion. And then also a lot of people were convicted and even murdered because of the alleged information that JFK had on UFOs and extraterrestrial craft. And it was just obvious that the CIA and the mafia were very heavily involved in the situation with Kennedy's assassination, you know.
Sam knows I go far, far down the JFK rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I have
I
have like almost every book that's ever been written about JFK.
Oh, nice. Yeah, and you know, who knows how many people were killed in total with the whole Kennedy assassination. But there were clearly there were other evident murders of people who had been provided with particular details of what Kennedy's knowledge on UFOs was, as well as specific details of his assassination. So people that had, you know, the real information that Kennedy had that he wanted to release to the public, those people were, you know, taken out and assassinated as well. The specific one was Dorothy Kilgallen.
Yes, pretty famous reporter.
Yeah.
There's been a couple of books about her and how she was going to blow the case wide open, and then, yeah, just randomly. I think when looking in JFK too, because there's really like two big conspiracies I've always kind of found interesting. Obviously Roswell and then JFK, because it's Occam's razor, right? I mean, the simplest answer is the truth, but what we've been told does not seem like the simplest reason. Having followed Oswald's path in Dallas when I was there, it takes longer than it should have, but
yeah,
perhaps that's modern traffic, but I don't know. I definitely think Oswald was involved, having dug more and more into him. I don't think he was totally just like a patsy. He definitely played some part, but I definitely think there's probably at least one other shooter.
Yeah.
If not
Yeah.
more.
That rabbit hole just goes infinitely deep, you know. And you know, they didn't really go into any detail on that specifically in this documentary. But you know, it was thought that these people who had been provided with this information from JFK would be, you know, disseminating, like you said, they would be releasing this information very soon. And, you know, then those people were either threatened and completely shut up, or they were just killed, you know. So I love that story. Just to relate this story back to the documentary, one of the pieces of knowledge that JFK had that they talked about a lot in the documentary was the anti-gravitational propulsion systems. You know, and we talked about that a little bit, but you know, I've looked at some of these patents on the anti-gravity propulsion systems, and they basically talk about that they, you know, have several reactors, if you will, that produce extremely high amounts of energy, and they create a gravitational force field, if you will, around the craft. So the craft has its own gravity. The craft isn't even affected by any type of planetary gravity, which is why these crafts can travel directly down into water. These transmedium UFOs that essentially travel, at thousands of miles an hour in the air and then all of a sudden descend underwater and are traveling at the same speed underwater. The water did not affect them whatsoever. There's other crafts that have been seen that actually like dematerialize through mountains. They go directly through physical solid objects, which is definitely like, for me, that really alludes to this higher dimensional plane that, their electromagnetic energy is able to be seen by our eyes and our cameras, but they are not actually physically in this three-dimensional universe. They are in another universe, or they're in some sort of other dimension or some type of dematerialized state where they can travel directly through solid objects. And I just find that type of technology incredibly fascinating, because it makes you really wonder, it's enough to think about the anti-gravitational propulsion systems, but then to think of how an object could like physically travel through a solid object, that's like complete magic to us. That's just complete lunacy to us. We would say that's witchcraft and we'd burn them at the stake. But yeah, I think that the anti-gravitational propulsion systems, in terms of like what we have on public record that is actually disclosed information, Stephen Greer definitely has done long talks about this and actually shown these diagrams talking about how these crafts work. And I think that the fact that we have that information should really kind of open people's eyes to the subject that, there's definitely a possibility that other life out there exists, because to say like, oh, these aliens are using UFOs, you're totally sorry, these aliens are using anti-gravitational propulsion systems for their UFOs. You're completely crazy for thinking that. And you are just a goon. But, now all of a sudden we have these actual patents on public record created by the US government showing exactly shapes of crafts using anti-gravitational systems that look just like the flying saucers that people have been seeing, for centuries.
I think Von Braun was the one that initially created it, and they've just been upgrading it from there.
Yeah. Warner von Braun. I definitely have looked into that a little bit. What are your thoughts on that, Keegan?
I mean, I've definitely heard it a lot. Like I said, the Undisclosed book. I don't know if you should check it out if you have not. I think you'd really get a kick out of it, even though it's a fictional book. Like I said, Stephen Greer and some other people helped Steve with it.
Yeah.
So he talks a lot about like the anti-gravitational and like 0 point energy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's also maybe 0 point was from an Unacknowledged as well. That documentary.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely need to check that one out. Obviously.
I will say, for me, I think of the two so far of this like trilogy, I think Unacknowledged is the better one.
Okay.
So I definitely want to hear your thoughts on it.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah. Yeah. My apologies for not rewatching that.
It's good. We watched that like, I don't even know how long. It's been a while.
I could have given you some good opinions for sure, but I'll definitely do that for next time. And just speaking on the subject of like evidence that we have, very compelling, weird, strange evidence that we have on the connection with UFOs, that I wanted to bring up, which is definitely aside from the documentary. But this was a topic that I was talking with several people about that are pretty well versed on the UFO subject, about these specific cattle mutilations. And a lot of people, it's the cattle mutilation subject is a pretty unpopular opinion, I would say. But there have been cattle mutilations where the eyeballs and all of their internal organs are removed with absolute perfect surgical precision. And, this is all happening supposedly in the middle of the night in a field, you know? They're saying on some of these mutilations, the surgical precision is actually so precise that it goes down to like a perfect molecular level on the cutting, is like so insanely precise that we don't even actually know how it was done. Surgical precision that cannot be replicated. And actually here in Denver, I live in Denver, Colorado. There was an interesting subject on this on just the mutilation phenomena in general, where in Denver, and Sam and Keegan, I wanted to specifically tell you guys this. There were tons of cats that were found in the same exact way as these very bizarre, unexplainable cattle mutilations, where they were found just around the city with perfect surgical removal of organs and eyes and tongue, etc., using a surgical precision that people believe they could not replicate. Even the best surgeons on the globe could not replicate. So they went after the cats, guys.
Yeah, we definitely we've talked a couple times about
the
like
Egyptians would be so upset.
mutilations. Right. Yeah, Sam he did a whole episode on some cattle mutilations out in Franktown.
Oh, interesting.
I forget the years. I want to say like 70s or 80s.
Okay.
But we got as close as we could, and now it's been developed. It's not a ranch anymore, but that was kind of interesting to look into. I know we're trying to go out east because at one time there was 250, Sam, something like crazy like that.
50 mutilations that happened.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild to me, man. To think that to think like on the skeptical side that like some insane master surgeon is like fucking tackling cattle down in a field in the middle of the night and perfectly removing all their organs. By the way, in a lot of these cases, there's zero blood found at the scene, which would be a physical impossibility. If organs were removed in the middle of a field, there's no way that you wouldn't have blood. So the blood is just completely drained. There's no evidence of blood. And all you see is these perfect, precise surgical cuts and organs and eyes removed. Really bizarre. It's a bizarre surgery, like who would want all those eyeballs of, cattle and apparently cats. I also read a story of a human being found on the top of a skyscraper with the same mutilation techniques of removing the eyeballs, removing the bottom jaw, removing the like rib cage even, and leaving the rest of the body on top of a skyscraper. And again, with this perfect surgical precision, and it's hard to know if a story like that is true. But
it made the news. I thought that one made the news And for some reason, I thought it was possibly the Sears Tower that they found it on, like, because I know it was like a really, really tall skyscraper.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
exactly what it was, but like for some reason, I thought it was the Sears Tower.
I mean, that's crazy. And then um, also on the evidence that we have currently, we talked about the, propulsion systems, the psychic, hyper advanced psychic abilities that these beings are explained to be able to have. But then there's also another subject that is a relatively touchy subject for some people, due to, once again, I would say disinformation, but it's the real crop circles. And we're talking about crop circles that have hyper advanced geometrical shapes and patterns that are created in the span of 45 minutes. And these crop circles cover multiple acres of land. And there's a particular video in the documentary that actually really hit hard with me, because it's the same video that my dad sent me when I was like 10 years old, back when like LimeWire was a thing. And it's a video of these two balls of light on this old camera that are like moving across this field, and you see this massive complex formation of crop circle just take place almost instantly right in front of your eyes. And my dad just told me recently when I talked to him about it that that is still the most compelling crop circle video that he's ever seen. And, he sent me that friggin' 20 years ago. And it was cool to see that video in there because, clearly, they wouldn't have used that video for this documentary if there wasn't, some type of unexplainable strangeness to that specific video. But I'm a firm believer that the real crop circles are not just these fabrications of a group of dudes in a field overnight with a 2x4 with two strings attached on either end, just pushing the 2x4 down to supposedly bend the crops, which it actually just breaks the crops if you do that. And in these real crop circles, they have done studies of electromagnetic energy and fields of energy around these crop circles, and the crops themselves are, none of them are broken. They're all like perfectly bent over right at the base, which is not even possible to do. If you were to try to bend a crop in that way, you would absolutely break the stalk of the crop. You would that central node of the crop would just be snapped in half. So the real evidence of legitimate crop circles, for me, is very compelling. And I was wondering if there are any particular crop circles that you guys have seen that are also compelling for you.
I mean, not like in person. I know we've talked to Wally
Yeah.
about crop circles. In his book, Crossing the Crevasse, he includes some interesting ones. And he definitely admits that there's some that are hoaxed.
Yeah.
But in his book, he shows a pretty good diagram or a picture of both, like what he considers a real one versus a hoaxed one.
Yeah.
And it's pretty interesting. I definitely, if you haven't checked that out, I would say pick up his book. I
Okay.
think you would love it.
I'll check
Crossing
it
the
out because
Crevasse.
I enjoyed that interview that you guys had with him a lot. And I thought he had some really great points, specifically for me, his points in relation to the religious connection to extraterrestrials was particularly exciting, like the Ezekiel's wheel and things like the Star of David, or the the star that guided the shepherds to Jerusalem, to Jesus. And, all sorts of stories in there. Sam had mentioned about other ancient scriptures talking about these cataclysmic battles in the sky, these cataclysmic battles of the ancient Anunnaki, according to Sumerian text, which was, carved on tablets. And, that's how they, recorded history, was by these, intricate writings on tablets and stuff. And, we just see so much evidence of extraterrestrial phenomena in ancient scripture, whether it be written on a stone or written on a parchment, or, what we consider as now the modern Bible. I just think that people who rely directly on the words of ancient scripture and take them literally, and basically are completely rejecting anything that is outside of the belief of that scripture, I think that is really something that holds the human consciousness back from being able to be open to the modern advancements of technology and of science in general, because there were points in time where there were, mysteries of the universe that were so puzzling to even the greatest philosophers and astrologers of their time. But now those things are, considered to just be common knowledge in science, like the existence of planets and the fact that the lights in the sky that you see at night are actually, burning balls of gas millions of miles away in the famous quote of Pumbaa from The Lion King when they talk about the stars.
Oh,
And it's just there were these mysteries that seemed to be like this unsolvable conundrum of the universe, but now they're just considered ubiquitous common knowledge, and as science progresses, we learn more and more about these fundamental truths of the universe. So if your whole life is revolving around the scripture of a 2,000-year-old book, that was written over 200 years, the Bible wasn't truly developed until around 200 years after the death of Christ. And the Bible was written many times over again by multiple generations of people, and all combined and compiled together to create the story of the Bible. So just like Mr. Wagner, your other interviewee, was saying, it's like playing a 2,000-year-old game of telephone, where people are constantly revising and editing the actual verbiage of the scripture to more modern verbiage. And so you have this like transposing or translation over time, that has very clearly changed over time, And so my thoughts are, people should try to be more open to the concepts of these stories in the Bible, being able to be explained in the view of modern science. When you're talking about lights that were clearly under intelligent control, guiding these shepherds towards one of the most important moments in history, which was the birth of the Messiah, which is also an interesting subject in itself. The fact that Jesus could perform these miracles where he could walk on water and he could cure people of their blindness, in a modern scientific explanation of that, based on psychic abilities that we have heard about that these extraterrestrials have. One could posit that Jesus himself was a higher dimensional being in the shape of man, and was able to use a higher type of psychic resonance to be able to manipulate things in the three-dimensional universe. Jesus was like this transcendent being that had a much deeper form of knowledge that related to a much more advanced psychic ability. And who's to say that Jesus himself wasn't one of the Nordic aliens that we hear so much about, that essentially represent almost the exact same depiction of what the angels are in the Bible. So abductees and people that have, specifically Travis Walton, who have had these experiences and come out about it publicly on a mass scale, have talked about these Nordic beings, which are these very tall humanoid beings that look very similar to humans, but they have this incredible beauty and this incredible love projecting from them. And they're super tall with bright white or blonde hair, and this is like exactly how angels are depicted. These Nordic aliens have been seen by abductees for centuries and have been talked about for centuries now. And I think it's something that people could be open to say, maybe Jesus was a part of this higher coalition of beings that were kind of put in charge of, both the creation of mankind in general and looking over mankind. That's a big possibility that could be the truth, that the actual origin of man is through the genetic manipulation of a higher race that created us in their image. And that's that classic concept in the Bible that man was created in the image of God. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I mean, that's interesting because in this documentary, they talk about trying to force Jesus back to Earth.
Yeah, I heard about that, or I saw that. I was really wondering what that was all about.
It's hard to say. I don't have the answers to that.
Yeah.
Something that we can figure out in time.
Yeah.
I think it was just them saying that they were going to manipulate the public into thinking like Christ had returned.
Oh, yeah.
Could be a possibility too.
Yeah, if I remember it correctly.
Yeah, which essentially would bring, it's all like in order to enable the agenda of the one world government to obtain that control, for like the Messiah to come back or for an alien invasion to happen would unite the entire world, I somehow
which wouldn't be a terrible idea, but not for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Have you guys ever heard of a book called All Tomorrows?
Yes.
Familiar.
Yeah.
So All Tomorrows is such a fascinating story. And just like the other video that you were just telling me that I should watch, the other documentary as a part of this series of the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. What was that called again, Keegan?
Unacknowledged.
Unacknowledged. Just like that documentary, this story is a fictional story, but it's extremely provocative and or profound, I should say, in the sense that it tries to explain the course of human history in terms of our future. And it talks about how humans traveled to Mars and eventually, became adapted to Mars over like several thousand years, and how then there was like a war between Earth and Mars, between the humans of Earth and the humans of Mars, because they became so diverse from each other, evolving on different planets. And then there's this like creepy, massive super race called the Q, which are these aliens that come in and basically completely wipe out all of humanity's defenses with ease. And they take humanity and they create different genetic experiments with all of humankind and place them on different planets throughout the galaxy. So some humans are literally like a blob of meat uh, having to exist on a different far off planet. And then other humans are like this creepy, like humanoid insect being. And the story goes on, and I don't want to spoil any more of it, but it's really an interesting story in terms of like how possible that could actually be, you know?
Sure.
Yeah, it's a fascinating look. It's by C.M. Kozman, for those that don't know. And it's kind of an homage to an earlier book by Dougal Dixon called Man After Man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Dougal Dixon. I actually have After Man right there, which is more of his like what inspired the Future is Wild documentary. I'm not sure if you ever saw that.
I believe I did see that.
Yeah, he made three. So the Future is Wild, Man After Man, and then the New Dinosaurs, which was like a speculative evolution look if dinosaurs didn't go extinct.
Yeah.
But yeah, Man After Man is fascinating. It's really hard to find. It goes for like thousands of dollars because it's only been in print once.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, I think that was why C.M. Kozman actually kind of made the. I don't know if it was an homage, but it was down kind of that same thought where it's speculative evolution. C.M. Kozman does some wonderful work also with like making cryptids real and stuff like that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, yeah. No, I recommend that book as well.
That's awesome, dude. One of the most inspiring creators of like an alien like cryptid world is and a lot of people will know this name, is H.R. Geiger. And he was the artist that was the original inspiration for the movie Alien. His art, um, in his terms, is they are depictions of his dreams. And every night he would have these dreams of these massive alien worlds that showed these phallic human these alien robotic creations, these like biological mechanisms of just like entire planets made up of these biological mechanisms. And he would have these dreams every night, and he said he painted from reality. So meaning that he painted from what he was truly seeing in his dreams. And he was another artist similar to H.R. Geiger that I only found relatively.
Yeah, don't know if you can see, but that's some of Dougal Dixon
Oh no!
on his Man After Man.
Yeah, like blobby people with like frog people with fit or with freaking webbed feet and hands.
Yeah,
That's pretty. Gosh, it's so weird. It's
yeah.
like a real uncanny valley type of thing. It is interesting to me though, because if we were to truly go to an alien planet with sentient life on it, it would be very uncanny valley for us, you know. So I think you'd really have to go about it with a much different approach, because fear is that driving factor. Fear of the unknown is what makes us scared of these things, you know.
True.
These things that are ubiquitously considered to be terrifying. And if you saw it in real life, you would freeze in fear. But if you didn't have that inhibition of fear, then you could learn and progress rather than bottle up and be in fear and anxiety about the subject. You know, you can learn infinite amounts of knowledge about even the tiniest microcosm that we know of, you know. So going about progressing in the universe without fear, I think, is probably the only way that we'll even be able to come in contact with alien life.
I mean, yes, but fear has been like kind of pushed upon us through like media, and unfortunately some religion kind of creates a fear in there as well. So
I mean, I don't know. There's a pretty famous alien that's known worldwide that's been pushed by the media that he's only here to help us. And it was someone that actually Alan brought up in a really old debate from like 2015. But I mean, Superman is a alien that's come from another planet that's here just to help, humanity. He
Yeah.
just wants the best for humanity. So I don't know. I
I
do
think that,
think there's a lot of like aliens in media, where they're
yep,
here for good reasons, but
Dragon Ball Z,
unfortunately,
Goku.
what?
Dragon Ball Z is all aliens.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different like aliens in media, and I think they just get pushed aside because a lot of times they're either like comics or like cartoons, and or just not like those big movies. Or a lot of times aliens are just depicted in horror movies because they're an easy out, I think.
yeah,
Um,
definitely. I
it's
think it also helps to push that agenda like that we've been talking about, which is uh they don't want to disclose real information about alien life right now. So the more that people fear that, the better off they are. The elite powers that are, you know, controlling that fear system that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, like you were saying, there are plenty of good aliens out there. There was that movie with Seth Rogen. What was it called? It was like
Paul.
Paul. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paul, you know, is a gray alien that is like totally benevolent and doesn't have any malicious intent towards humanity. E.T. is probably the most famous example of that.
Mhm.
E.T. really has no malicious intent towards humanity. He's trying to just get home because he just crashed here. I think
Well,
that's an interesting concept to think of. Like we know of these classic beings that we have come into contact with, the Nordic aliens, the reptilianoid aliens. There's another one that I've heard of that's a little bit more rare called like the mantis aliens. They're like an insectoid race of aliens that have been less commonly described in by abductees, but by still a good amount of abductees, they describe these mantis beings as being like even much more psychically advanced and technologically advanced than both the reptilians and the greys. There are several other beings that are talked about, specifically in like the Bible, where they're talking about the cherubim. The cherubim were the angels that descended down in these concentric wheels of light and glory that had eyes all around the rims. An interesting piece of etymology that I found out is that in the language at the time, which would have been Aramaic, um, eyes was also synonymously translated to lights because that, you know, the classic saying, the lights of your eyes. Um, uh, it all comes from this root of eyes also actually being synonymous with lights. So, you have these concentric wheels with lights all around them, and then these beings that are like these, honestly, based on the description, like pretty terrifying creatures that are made up of like a hybrid of 4 different animals with still a humanoid body underneath that. And then there's depictions of, dragons in all kinds of lore from different unconnected civilizations from, all across the board. But in the story of E.T., it's interesting to think about, beings that are coming to planet Earth that are just, passing through to observe, that aren't really in connection with these other beings that people commonly, think are more in control of what happens on Earth, but just like a random, super strange looking alien that somehow, blipped into our solar system and, stopped by to try to look at it, and then they crashed or something like that. That's a very high possibility.
True. No, I
And they're
mean,
just trying to get home. Phone home.
All right, and that's kind of like a Super 8. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've seen Super 8, but it's similar where the alien just wants to go home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have seen that movie. That's the concept of like being stranded on a far off planet is like such a common sci-fi trope. It's a theme. It's a super common theme. Oh, one thing about the documentary that was so amazing to me is the random number generator experiments. So these experiments were crazy. They placed random number generator experiments all around the world to see if we could generate any sort of patterns about the universe, and which would also help to explain consciousness, because we really have no way to measure or define what consciousness truly is. We don't know what exactly the conscious perception of sentient mind is. And so they place these random number generators around the world, and these number generators were able to pick up on specific events in history, like the death of Princess Diana. And they were able to, they said that these random number generator charts went off the scale just before 9/11 happened. And it's like the universe definitely does have this conscious ability to detect these big events. The other one that was so interesting was where they placed a house plant in a room, and a light would be shining on the house plant only in a specific time, and the light would go to random quadrants of the room in different amounts of intervals, at random intervals, right? So completely random intervals, this light would change direction to a different part of the room. And after they ran this experiment for a long enough time, they found that even though it's supposed to be random, that the light ended up shining on the plant to keep it alive much more so than it chose to shine on any other area, on any other quadrant in the room. That it would always somehow consciously go back to the plant to perpetuate life. This like fundamental truth of the universe, like the universe intends to perpetuate life. And I just found that like deeply meaningful.
yeah, that was a pretty cool like experiment, and to like see it, like it was pretty sick.
Definitely, dude. Those are the things that I feel like should be more focused on by humanity. Because studying these phenomena, I think, is the real way to progress and evolve. Just being stuck in our like normal human lives, which has just been like the societal norm of like not believing in any of this stuff and thinking that anyone who does is absolutely crazy, and just being stuck in this humdrum of everyday human society, go to a job, come home, you got to make money to survive. Like, these are all creations of humankind. Other civilizations who have figured it out there are probably all using different approaches towards succeeding in their goals and endeavors of evolving and transcending. Probably massively different types of mechanical technologies that would dumbfound humanity, because it's just so unrelated to anything that we know currently now. And studying this stuff more, studying phenomena like that more, and trying to figure out the real meaning of consciousness, if we could all come together on a global scale to be able to progress in a positive way, then I don't have any problem with there being this united humanity where we are no longer using things like fear and things like racism to segregate us, and that all sentient minds are part of the one conscious mind of the universe. If we could focus more on that, then we wouldn't really be having these societal issues of racism and of just continuing to pollute the planet nonstop, and really struggle to get to a higher level. And it seems like we're in an incredibly important time in human history where now the government themselves have actually said, these are UFOs. This is what they're doing. They're traveling from 80,000 feet to the surface of the water in a split second. We have them tracked on, different sensors, including radar, including, infrared cameras, and, all this stuff. That's the first time in human history, at least since the dawn of our recorded history. I think, like, in pieces of history that we have lost, like the ancient Egyptians, the Mayans, the Sumerians, I do believe that they had a deeper understanding of the extraterrestrial connection to mankind than we do even currently. But I think that in our current generation and the current pathway of humanity, we are in an incredibly important time where we're actually being given information by the powers that be that say, hey, this isn't all just BS. This isn't all fake stuff. And we've actually been studying this stuff for decades. So I find that to be a very positive part of living in the now, right now.
And like trying to begin the next step.
Exactly. Yeah. Trying to progress to the stars, man. Trying to get to different galaxies.
Yeah.
I hope that disclosure happens within our lifetime.
No, that would be cool for a disclosure to happen in our lifetime. It would be pretty fascinating. Like, I'm not expecting it, honestly, but like it would be cool to have it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. My dad tells me that all the time, because my dad is, pretty prominent believer in all this stuff. And he's, the one who was sending me, videos all the way back in the very early 2000s about this phenomena and being interested and open to the idea of the phenomena being real. I think like literally the first step for anyone getting into this subject is just keeping an open mind that there are infinite possibilities in our reality. So, that being said, it is very highly possible that all of this stuff regarding extraterrestrial life is legitimate and true, regardless of whether or not there is non-circumstantial evidence or whether or not it can be truly proved in front of your face. Like, I've got friends that literally would not believe, that are so skeptical, they would not even believe it if they saw a UFO come and land on their front lawn. Their mind would try to find a way to explain it in human terms and try to not believe it, you know, which is why I think, those people that really aren't ready are honestly probably one of the main reasons why they haven't done that. Why?
Government.
Yeah.
Corruption.
Yeah, exactly. And just, yeah, and that government corruption leading to such deep fear of this being a reality that literally seeing it in front of their face, they would still try to find a way to escape from that being a reality, Which is why humanity is probably most likely not ready for this information yet. And it's probably why the government is trying to manipulate society to, not believe in it just yet. Because I've heard the explanation that human beings don't have the mental cognitive capacity to understand higher dimensional properties just yet. We're just not there. We're not ready yet. But we are on the course and on the pathway to getting there.
We're on a pathway. Whether it's the correct one or not is debatable.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, when it gets to that scale, Sam, it gets to a point of morality. What truly is correct and what truly is incorrect. Because the people that are in charge of this whole operation, they believe that they are in the right and that they are living the best pathway, or trying to. And when it comes to a like galactic scale, if one alien civilization is being affected by another to the point where their agenda for progressing their civilization is being hindered by another civilization, they will do whatever they can to continue the survival of like any living being. They will naturally do anything they can to continue their survival. So if one civilization who thinks they're in the right, they're saying, it's like the same concept of imperialism here on planet Earth, where we have these leaders that go to other countries and take over, just completely take over. And they believe that, they are conquesting for the progression of their race, of their culture. And but the other culture that's getting the brunt end of it, for example, the Native Americans, who were just completely like wiped out from their homelands, they think that is the most evil thing that that a sentient being could possibly do. Just come in, take your land, rape your women, and destroy your culture. But to the people that did that, we say, that's the only reason why America has progressed as far as it has, now. And so it's a very touchy subject because, who's to say what's right and what's wrong? Any civilization with an agenda is going to have their own version of morality and what they think is morally good and what they think is morally evil. So when it gets to that galactic scale, is there really a right or wrong? Well, that's based on your own perception.
True.
Is it wrong that in the Dulce papers they say that in the Dulce base underneath Los Alamos Labs that alien beings are creating human animal hybrids and these new creatures that go against any type of morality of man? Is that truly wrong? Well, not in their eyes. If that were to be true, they think that they are doing the research that they need to do in order to proceed with the agenda that they have to progress their civilization. So, they think it's totally fine to abduct people and, put prods up their anus and, experiment on people and everything like that. People are like, oh, these aliens are super evil. But to the aliens, and just like to humans, we take animals out of their environment and run these same type of experiments on animals. We're dissecting them, we're cutting them up, and trying to find ways that these animals can benefit us, and just having complete dominance and power over these other creatures, over these other living creatures. And that's exactly the same story with extraterrestrial beings abducting humans here on planet Earth, where they believe like they're just picking an ant off the ground and trying to study it. We're like
True.
their ant farm.
Yeah. That is, yeah, I mean, you have a point there.
So yeah, it's hard to say, like, are they truly evil for what they're doing? To us, yes, because to the malevolent beings that have zero care and zero empathy towards human life, which has been explained particularly about the reptilian race, they have zero empathy. They have no understanding of love or positive frequencies. They run and operate at extremely low frequencies that are devoid of any light and love. And these beings would probably not care at all if humankind was completely wiped out. But these beings are using humankind for their own agendas, which is like for the manipulation of humankind. And I've heard of people talking about things like vampirism, where it's like this these evil beings that vampirism doesn't necessarily just adhere to the concept of like the Dracula vampire, where it's like a man with big fangs. Vampirism is like the feeding off of negative energy and feeding off of psychic energy and using that for yourself. That's what also a lot of ancient cultures, specifically in the Middle East, talk about, like the jinn. I'm sure you guys have heard about the jinn, which are like these shadow genies. That jinn is actually the derivative term that created the word genie. And they're these beings that are like shape-shifting shadow creatures that feed off of the innocence of humankind. So they feed off of fear, they feed off of depression and sadness, and that's what feeds their power. These are all the stories that I've heard of. So I'm not saying that I believe that there's like these psychic vampires out there, but that's how the reptilian beings are really explained. That and in these occult practices where people of these secret societies, who are like worshiping these entities, these dark entities like Moloch and like Baal, Baal. These are these like classic demonic entities that have total control and power over humankind and feed off of the blood of children and stuff like that. And uh, a lot of these gods are relative deities to the similar Mayan gods, where the Mayans were literally taking, innocent women, children, and people of all kinds, and putting them on a pedestal and slicing their heart open and sacrificing them to these higher beings, because these higher beings allegedly live off of the sacrifice of human innocence, meaning like energy, like deep fear, and all the horrible things that we think about. And that is the concept of Satan, getting into your brain and making you think all these dark, horrible thoughts. And people that follow religion will tell you that. They'll say, that's the devil getting into your brain, or that's the devil all around us. And so I think there's some really interesting correlations with the worshiping of reptilian entities, both by the Egyptians and by the occult. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I definitely wanted to, mention about like all these occults, all these secret cults and societies are worshiping entities that feed off of the sacrifice of humankind.
All right, so I guess since our computer keeps doing whatever it's doing, we'll just go into some final thoughts about the documentary, as well as rating recommendation. So Sam, what do you think?
I mean, I definitely love the documentary, just like I loved Unacknowledged, which they aren't really kind of together in like a trilogy at all, I would say, or like they are related, but they're not really related at the same time. I definitely recommend it. It's a good documentary. But no, I definitely recommend it. I mean, I'll same as Unacknowledged, I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10. And yeah, no, I'll definitely check it out if you haven't already. It's definitely worth looking into. Definitely interesting, lots of interesting topics and ideas that will help you along your journey, depending on like how you go into it and how you view it, how you perceive what is being given to you. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it. 10 out of 10.
Nick, what about you?
I would absolutely agree. I found that there were a lot of aspects in this documentary that are that it's like a really nice compilation of almost everything in one, I would say, where other documentaries you have a more specific focus on one subject, where this documentary covered many, many interesting subjects. The random number generators throughout the world, the anti-gravitational propulsion systems, the manipulation and entrapment and murdering of people that have real information on the subject, and just in general talking about really important pieces of the phenomena that are expressed in a way that is easier to watch, for me at least. Much easier to watch than something like Ancient Aliens, for example, because this documentary comes from a foundation that is based on real evidence and real things that happen, not not just theoretical things of, this guy saw this happen at this point, and you're just supposed to believe that. It's displaying real evidence, real topics that have been, legitimately shared by many thousands, if not millions of people over time, over the course of history. So yeah, I would give it a 10 out of 10, and I'm super excited to watch Acknowledged based on what you guys have been saying about that. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys for allowing me to be on here with you, and I hope that we got some good stuff despite the camera
technical glitches. Yeah.
technical
Yeah.
glitches.
For me, I don't think I can put this at the same level as Unacknowledged, and I don't remember what I rated it. But compared to some of the other ones that we've watched as of recent, I would say it was better. It's definitely better filmed. Again, it's directed by Michael Mazzola, who did Unacknowledged as well. So I guess they just worked together, because I think the third Michael Mazzola film also features Stephen Greer. So I think they just, anytime we'll see them both. I could definitely see where people might go in expecting aliens, and then it's really about consciousness. So kind of a bait and switch in a way. For me, I would say probably a 6 out of 10 compared to Unacknowledged, just because Unacknowledged, and Sam, don't do that. You gave Unacknowledged 10 out of 10. It might have been one that all of us gave 10 out of 10.
I'm pretty sure it was, but
Yeah.
After rating this one with that Jeremy Corbell is kind of upsetting.
I gave Jeremy a 4 or 5.
Which is pretty close to this, which is still.
No, it's not. It is not close.
Just 1 point off.
It's 10% off.
That is funny. What would you give it, though, in comparison to other doc? Because is that a rating that's just based on the comparison of this to Unacknowledged? Because how would you give it in comparison to like watching something like Ancient Aliens, or something, some garbage trash that
I mean, Ancient Aliens, I watched barely once, and then I turned off the television.
Yeah.
So at least I mean, I made it through it. To me, just because this series, we're trying to rank the 3 of them.
Yeah.
So it might change once we see the third one. I mean, I think we've seen that with some of our other ranking ones. I'm still open to it. I'm just saying, as of now, compared to Unacknowledged and Michael's other work, I just think that one was a little bit better done.
That's interesting. Well, yeah, I'm very
from like a directorial standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Super excited to see that one.
He's the movie fanatic, so he looks at it in like a presentation and like more of like a film sort of way.
Yeah, I try to look at it like, if I was a person that knew nothing of what was going on and just kind of saw the poster, what would I, think? And I think a lot of people, especially if you read some of the comments, that is one of the biggest gripes, is they thought it was going to be more like UFOs, like in Unacknowledged, which I have to watch it. I mean, we watched it not too long ago, but it was really fascinating. Like, Nick, I think you are going to really like that one.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I should have watched it before this, but I honestly only found out about it watching this documentary here now. So
if you told me I had to watch this or Hunt for the Skinwalker, I would pick this.
Okay.
Or this versus American Ghost Hunter, definitely picking this as well. So
well, these are the ones that you gave the lowest rating in the other ones, so it's not fair.
Well, those are just recent ones.
True.
Do you want me to go through the list of documentaries and reviews that we've done?
No.
All right. This is special request by Sam. Just
I
want
did
you all
not.
to know. He texted me. You guys can't see it's off camera, but he did text me. He
I
said,
can't
"Pretty."
text you. My phone to do this, and my my hands have not been on my phone.
What was the last one we uploaded, Sam?
Sorry.
There we go. We've done
The last one we
60,
did was
60.
Patient 17.
Yeah,
Which
but
Nick, you should look up too.
What?
Look at Patient 17, and I'm curious to think what you would think of that one.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
so are we
It's a
ruling
different.
out the actual films? So like One Eye Jacks was the last one that's been posted. So
True.
I'll rule that one out. Hunt for the Skinwalker versus this one. I would pick this one. I did not like Hunt for the Skinwalker. That was a tough watch.
Did you guys watch the Bob Lazar documentary that was also done with
Jeremy
Jeremy?
Corbell.
Yeah.
Yeah, we watched his entire filmography.
Yeah, so that one almost instantly just made me laugh because they went about it with this like classic Western movie trope where it was like an old man rambling as the narrator.
Yeah,
Like,
Mickey Rourke.
coming from the far east, it was just like so weirdly cheesy in the sense of like, why would you even approach it with like this old Western like narrator guy, and
Right.
showing all these shots not of like UFOs or real evidence, but just showing shots of like the open vast desert, like
Yeah,
rambling on.
It gets worse in Hunt for the Skinwalker.
yeah.
It's just
When I
like,
watched the bar one the first time, I definitely fell asleep for like a good 30-40 minutes of it.
Yeah.
And it was like nothing against it. Like I think I was just really tired because like when I was doing the review for Patient 17, or when we were doing the final ratings of all three of the movies, I rewatched the Bob Lazar one, and I didn't pass out that time, but like I did catch what I missed, and I was just like, well, I think I gave it a really low rating the first time, but then I like went back and was just like, it wasn't nearly as bad. I must have just been super tired that day to where I passed out during it.
All
yeah.
right, Sam, this
Go
or Moon Age
passed out.
Daydream?
What?
Remember Moon Age Daydream?
Moon Age Daydream? Oh,
David Bowie.
yeah. I mean, that one, I don't know. We're trying to compare that one to this one. That one was like a journey.
Right.
That
Well, then
one,
we have
like,
Bob Lazar.
I can't compare those two to this one just because that one was like it was like a trip without tripping.
Or yeah,
That's
then
funny.
we
That
got
was a subject that I wanted to talk about, but we probably don't have time for that. But um, the psychedelic journey and the psychedelic connection with um, consciousness is a very, very interesting topic that you could literally have an entire, you could have a whole podcast just dedicated to that. You could have a whole series dedicated to
I
that,
mean,
but
I'll probably have you back on because this one was more kind of like a podcast than a review.
yeah,
Because
a
we
little
went
bit, yeah.
on the movie itself than we normally do.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried to stay on topic for the movie as much as possible and use direct quotes from the movie and or sorry, from it's more of a documentary. It's not really a movie per
Yeah.
se, but uh the, concept of natural psychedelics and natural hallucinogens is a super, super fascinating subject in relation to human consciousness. And a lot of people even call psilocybin mushrooms like the alien mushroom, that it was potentially brought here, from a, meteor or something that crashed into Earth. And so, there's this theory that, psychedelics were purposefully put here for humankind to be able to kind of break that dimensional barrier. And have access to seeing different dimensions and different planes of existence.
Yeah, no, there's a couple books by Graham Hancock. I'm not sure if
Yes.
you've ever read his.
I
Yeah.
love Graham Hancock, man. I think he's great.
Yeah.
He's a bit strong spoken about the subject, but that's also because he's been disregarded by the Smithsonian and by so many other researchers in the field, credible researchers that have been using this historic narrative for the longest time. And then Graham Hancock comes in, showing evidence of things that would completely dismantle our current version of history. So, they just slander the crap out of him and, make everyone try to think he's just a kook. But he has such incredible information that's like very specific research data and information on psychedelics, as well as on the pyramids and many other archaeological sites like Pumupunku, Gobli Tepe, and these classic these ancient ruins of highly advanced structures that we have no idea how they were constructed at all.
Yeah, no, we'll have to talk about some of his stuff sometime. But for viewers that really enjoyed listening to you, where can they find you?
Okay, yeah. So you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. On Facebook, I'm just Nick Miller, so that's quite hard to find because there is just a million Nick Millers. But on Instagram, if you find me and message me, then I can send you the link to my Facebook if you'd like to follow me there. But my Instagram is at concentrated_chemistry. And then my TikTok is at Nick Miller Hello. No spaces, just all one word. And then I'm in a project. It's even more important for you to follow me there. I'm in a music project that I hope to be doing a video with you guys about very soon, called Hyperboloop, where we are playing frequencies that we created with these pretty advanced synthesizer programs that create some pretty complex frequency patterns as our message to the universe that humans truly are interesting and inventive creatures, and that we deserve a place among the Galactic Federation, if you will. And that is our YouTube page is at Hyperboloop, which is HYPERL BOLOOP, HYPERBOLOOP. And then our Instagram is at Hyperboloop_live. And thanks so much.
Yeah, no, thank you for joining us. And
throw it in the description.
yeah, no, I always put them in the description, so I'll find them and make sure they're on there.
That's perfect. I can send them to you.
Yeah, no, and we'll have you back. There's definitely a lot we can talk about, and we can do some crossovers with some other things as well. So I'm sure the channel will be seeing you here soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to it, and thank you so much again, you guys.
Yeah, no, thank you, and you have a wonderful night.
Yeah, you too.
Glitches.
Sam's over there. See, I told you, Sam. The minute you said it was a weather balloon, look what's gone. The internet's been weird.
You're the one that started that one.
Just as a joke.
A combination of that and probably the JFK for sure.
I mean, I don't think we go to Roswell every year just because we think it's a weather balloon.
Right.
True. True.
All right. Well, we will talk to you here soon, Nick, and then
Yeah.
definitely let me know once you watch Unacknowledged. It's
I
on
think I'm
Tubi
gonna
as
watch
well.
it immediately after this conversation. Just
Yeah,
because
and then
you
when
guys have
and
such
check out Patient
incredibly high
17.
ratings for it, and it seems like something that I would really, really enjoy.
Yeah, no, I think it was me, Matt, and Sam, and we all gave it tens, if I remember correctly.
Wow. Okay. Well,
I
that
thought Andrew might have been there.
probably
He,
one of the best.
yeah, I can't remember if Andrew was there because we had did the three and it was like changing people, and not everyone watched all three, so I don't
That is
remember.
true. That is true. That is true. I think it was just you, me, and Matt.
Mm-hmm. Because I remember we watched it at Matt's house.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but it's on Tubi. Go check it out, and I can't wait to hear what you think of it because I think you're gonna love that one.
That'll be awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look forward to it, guys. Again, I really appreciate you having me here, and I would like to, finish my portion again by sending out loving and positive frequencies to not only you guys but to all beings in the universe. And yeah, we love you.